Thank you, Lenny. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you back again tonight. Drew, I appreciated the prayer for our young people, and especially for those that are thinking about becoming Christians. Our young people are gone on the youth rally tonight, but I know I've got two different young people right now that are studying. They're walking through scriptures about what it means to, what they need to do in order to become a Christian in the middle of those studies. So I want to encourage y'all tonight. Continue to pray for them. Of course, we had exciting announcements this morning about our new youth minister tryouts that are going to be coming on, or those that are coming to look at that position at the end of this month. But our young people continue to impress me in so many different ways. But we've got young people that are thinking about their walk with God. It's a blessing that continues to happen. But anyways, it's just been neat. This week I've had two different conversations with young people that are considering those things. If you're here tonight and you're thinking about becoming a Christian, or you have questions, you're wondering about what to do, know that we want to help you in whatever way we can to get you to walk with the Lord. Tonight we're going to be in Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26. This year on Sunday nights we've been looking at pictures of Jesus. And as we draw near to the time of year that Jesus was sacrificed for all of mankind, for the next 4 weeks we're going to be sort of focusing on his walk to the cross. We're going to see him in the garden. We're going to see him on trial. We're going to see pictures of him on the cross. We're going to see him raised again. Our picture tonight as we look at Jesus in the garden is going to be after he has after he's had the Last Supper. He's had the Passover meal. Said that he's crossed over the Kidron Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane. This is a picture from, they said, between 1948 and 1958. I liked it because it sort of eliminated a couple things, but that's what they would say is the Garden of Gethsemane. There is the wall of Jerusalem. You have the beautiful gate that's across the way, and as you think about Jesus leaving the room where they had the Last Supper, what had he done? He had washed their feet. He had told them how that the Passover meal that they had, he had instituted the Lord's Supper that would help them to remember him. If you look in the other gospel accounts, you're going to see him giving last-minute teachings on greatness. You're going to see the high priestly prayer of him praying not just for those who were following him at that time, but for all those who would believe on him through what they had to talk about. You see a lot of last-minute teachings. And then we come to Matthew chapter 26, verse 30. And it says, when they had sung a hymn, they went over to the Mount of Olives. So as you come through, this is a valley, and if you were to, from where that picture is standing, if you were to turn and go in the other direction, it's about that same grade as you turn the other way, and you just have a sloping valley that's up. So we know that Jesus is going to walk a short period out of Jerusalem. He goes to this place, and you have to realize during the Passover there are hundreds of thousands of people that are coming to Jerusalem. They're all coming to offer their sacrifices and to share in this feast. And as the city is going to take as many people as they can, people will be spread all over the place. Judas knows where Jesus' place is going to be, where he's going to be staying that night. He's made the decision to betray him already, and Jesus walks across inside of the walls, and he's going to find a place there in a garden, and he's going to be praying to the Lord. It's a special time as he has spent this time with his disciples, but he knows exactly what is going to take place that night. He says to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I will go before you to Jerusalem." Jesus loved these men, but one of the things that he knew as he went to the garden was he knew that they were going to leave him. The range of emotions that had to be in his mind and in his heart. He's talked about the love that he has for them. He's talked about his blood that was shed for them, for the forgiveness of their sins. But what does he also know? As we leave right here, even though I've been praying for you, I know that you're going to be scattered. Tonight, regardless of what you say or regardless of what you're thinking, you're going to leave me tonight. And as he goes to the garden, he's going there with a group of men, but he knows he's going to leave alone. And he is aware of these things, and he even tells them that as he talks about the fact that they're going to be scattered. But then you see Peter's response to him. Peter answered him and said, "Though all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of the disciples said the same. I don't know what's a bigger letdown is whenever somebody says, whenever somebody just lets you down and you see it and you're surprised and you're shocked by that, or is it a bigger letdown whenever they come and tell you they're going to do something, they recommit to that, and then they fall away on what they've said anyways. But Peter here is going to talk to him. But a lot of times when we look at this idea of them scattering, if they're going to leave Jesus alone, Peter, of course, gets the bad rap. But look there at the end of verse 35. All the disciples said the same thing. As Jesus goes to the garden, Jesus goes and he realizes that he's going to go with a group, and he knows that he's going to go alone. He also knows that in the midst of that night, in the midst of his trial, the one who stands up and always has something to say, there's no way I'm going to turn away from you. He knows that Peter is going to deny him. And he has to look at the one who he knows is going to deny him in his time of greatest need, in his moment of greatest turmoil in his life, the moment with which he's going to have to give his all. He knows that those that were with him are going to be scattered, and you, Peter, are going to curse and deny me. And Jesus goes into the garden with them as well. I want you to stop for a moment as we think about what Jesus is doing as we look at this picture, and I want you to look at this situation and consider the love of our Savior. Consider his love. What was the price that was going to be paid for their sin? His blood, right? He knows. He's already sort of instituted that idea. He has told them ahead of time, and it probably didn't make sense to them, but he says, no, I'm going to shed my blood. Why? Because it's going to allow you to have forgiveness of your sins. But what's he going to know they're going to do that night? He knew that they were going to sin, and they were going to forsake him, and they were going to deny him, and they were going to walk away from him. And he knew what made him have to pay the price for sin. He knew why his blood was going to be shed. It was because of the choices of these individuals. He knew that his followers would sin. And that was the cause of why he's doing all of these things. But what's he done for them that night? I know you're going to sin, but I'll wash your feet. I know you're going to sin, but I'm going to pray to my Father on your behalf. I know you're going to let me down, but regardless of what you've done, I'm going to die for you because I have within my hands the ability to make all these things right. What does he say to him? He says, you're all going to fall away because of me this night. He sees the cause of their sin. He says, you know what's going to happen? You're going to see the things that are happening to me, and it's going to make you so afraid that you're going to run away. You're going to see the crowds coming that are against everything that I'm about, and you're going to scatter. He sees those things coming. He sees that their betrayal is going to take place. He looks at Peter and says, tonight you're going to deny me 3 times. He knows his sin intimately. He says, I know the number of times that you're going to reject me. Time and time and time again. And he never hesitates to go to the cross. I believe as we look at the Savior tonight, we need to look at ourselves. What does he know about our lives? He knows that time and again we failed him, haven't we? He knows our sin intimately. He knows the thoughts. He knows the actions. He knows the selfishness. He knows the greed. He knows the lust. He knows all of the other things that we have done. But what do we see with Jesus in the garden? I'm not turning back. Why? Because of his love. He says, after I'm raised, I will go before you. I think that's one of the things that he has on a perspective that makes it so difficult for us to forgive, and it makes it so difficult sometimes for us to see past the mistakes of other people, but see, Jesus sees beyond their sin. He knows what's going to happen that night, but he also knows what's coming. He knows that the resurrection is going to take place. He knows that one of the days all these guys that are going to be scattered are going to come back together. They're going to be out there on that Sea of Galilee. They're going to gather up again. They're going to be fishing, and he's going to say, come on over here. I've got breakfast ready. He's going to be able to sit down and look at Peter in the face and say, Peter, do you love me? He sees beyond what they are in the moment. And for us, what Satan wants us to do is only think and get lost in the sin of the moment, of the way that we've fallen short. But Jesus' love knows that we fall short. He knows intimately how we fall short, but he sees beyond what we have done to what we can become. And because of that, what's he going to do? He's going to go to the cross. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 says, for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. As we reflect on what Jesus does, let's reflect on his love, but let's reflect on ourselves as well. Know that he is aware of your sin. Whatever you have, and what do? We try to hide it. We try to have our shame or not share it. We try not to open up because of the things that have happened in life, but we need to remember that he knows our sin, and he knows it intimately, and he would have gone to the cross anyways. I believe with all of my heart, if it was just you, if it was just me, if it was all of my sins, they were enough for him to go to the cross on our behalf. Why? Because he also knows what we can be. He knows what can become through the Spirit's power and how he changes us. As you see Jesus in the garden, I hope that you see his love for mankind. You also see, as you look in the garden, you see Jesus' need for prayer. Why does he do it? He gets away and it's there at night. You can imagine the week that he has had. Coming all the way from Galilee to Jerusalem, coming in to the crowds and the people praising his name, him confronting the religious leaders of his day, him clearing out the temple, all the busyness of the week, all of the different miracles, the teaching, all these things that have been taking place. He has got to be exhausted, but what does he need more than anything else in the garden? He needs to spend time in prayer. And for us, I want to ask you, what do you do in your moments of chaos? What do you do when the stresses of the world come around you? What do you do when the end is near? Jesus shows us we should pray. Now, chances are my mom is not watching live. She doesn't watch these live. She usually catches them. I'll find out about this lesson on Monday or Tuesday. I'll let you know later. But I'm going to go ahead and tell a story on Mom tonight as I think about this idea of what do we do in the midst of chaos. This was about Nathan's 18. When kids are gone, you can talk about them too. I would say Nathan was about 5 years old. We're over at Mom and Dad's house, which is currently our house. It was before we had swapped houses. And we're in there in the kitchen having a good time, and all of a sudden you hear the scream. If you're the parent of children, especially boys, and you have been around great injuries, you hear the wail of the scream. And Nathan comes walking in. He's about 4 or 5, and I'm looking at him, and he's got this horrified look on his face. And I don't know exactly what it is until I see the back of his head, and blood is pouring out of his head. I have no idea what they've done. They've been outside. Now, long story short is he's fine. It was a head bleed, but boy, they can bleed. And he was on the tailgate of my truck, and his little brother Matthew went up and grabbed the handle of the tailgate and went, boop, and opened it. So he had gone straight back, popped his head on the pea gravel. Well, he comes in. By the time he's gotten to me, he has bled down to his shorts. All I do is grab the back of his head and mash it. I apply pressure immediately. He's probably got fingerprints on his head to this point, still at this point in his life, because I'm just mashing it going, I have no idea. I don't know how deep this blood, I don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, just the chaos ensues. What happens in the middle of chaos? My dad's over there, and he's like, okay. In the middle of chaos, sometimes you can just ignore it. Some people have that ability. Dad was like, well, I reckon John's got that covered. Natalie immediately, let's just say she's not real good. She's laughing. She doesn't do real good with the blood front on the front. And I'm going, okay, look, I've got my hand on it, but I need something to add to this. Y'all get me a towel, get something. I do believe Dad probably said, like, don't get the good towels. You got to get the blood towels, not the good stuff. He maybe give a little bit of that. Mom has disappeared. So I'm holding Nathan, and I'm over here going, I don't even know what the injury is right now. I'm mashing on his head. Just get me a towel, somebody. I'm over here because what do you do in the midst of chaos? You handle it, right? I've got control of this, and I'm going to handle this. Natalie runs back, and the story got slowly revealed after we had gone and got him sewn up again and come back. But Natalie goes running back into the bedroom, and my mom is on her knees on the bed like this, curled up and hiding. Natalie walks in. What's happened to her? And she's trying to find a towel, and somebody else is out. What did Mom say later on? I was just praying. What else are you going to do? It's like, well, get me a towel. It would be nice. But she didn't get the towel. We've been there, haven't we? Just chaos, and we're all different, and our personalities are different. And some of us want to take control, and okay, I'm gonna man up for this moment of time, even though we're really not in control, but we want to do the best we can in the moment. And sometimes we just want to check out and act like chaos isn't happening, and I'm going to go do my own thing. Or sometimes we're just kind of panicked and we're not sure exactly, and we can't even figure out. We're just, we're just above our head on what we want to do. And sometimes what we need to do in moments is to be driven to our knees in prayer, right? Jesus in the garden says when everything is out of control, when everything is going crazy in this world, go to the one who is in control and pray to him. Jesus couldn't wait for the moment that he could get out there and pray. Why? Because his whole life was centered around that. I want you to think about your prayer life tonight. If I told you for the next month you cannot pray to God anymore, what would it do? It's a challenge to us, isn't it? Because maybe you're just trying to handle it all yourself, and I'll pray when needed, but not that big a deal. Maybe you're here tonight and like, I don't know, I haven't prayed much at all outside of coming together with God's people. But when we look at Jesus, we see the perfect example of how to walk with God, and it's going to involve walking in prayer. In Jesus' life, the pictures of Jesus in prayer are just beautiful. Him getting up before morning, before everybody else is up, because there's huge crowds of people, and he's going to go and find that time and that place that he's talked to us about in Matthew chapter 6. And he's going to pray to the Father. Before he picks those apostles, he's going to go up on a mountain by himself and spend the night in prayer. He's going to give himself to prayer because it's just a part of his walking. It's a part of everything that he does. And in the midst of this night, where he's trying to teach people for the last time, and he's trying to give one more physical example of service, and he's going to try to do one more time to lift up his followers to the Father, and he's going to pray, and he's singing a hymn with them, and he's trying to gather them up, and he's hoping that they'll do what's right. What he also wants to do is, just as natural as breathing is, I want to pray to the Father, and that's what he goes to do. He sets an unbelievable example for us. And what does Jesus tell us? He says, I need time with the Father. How bad do we need time with the Father? We would all do well to leave tonight and say in the next week, I'm going to spend more time with the Father. Wherever you are, I doubt that there's a person, if you're here, please come up and tell me, that's going to say, John, you know what, I'm praying enough right now. But I doubt that we're going to find that individual. Wherever you are, I love the song Higher Ground. It makes me think a lot about what we're doing this year. I want to get to higher ground. I want to get to where whenever there's a moment of stress, I pray. I want to get where there's a moment of chaos. My knee-jerk reaction is that I'm just going to fall on my knees to the ones who's in control. Whenever I'm trying to make those decisions, whenever I'm trying to figure out myself out of a situation, may we all come back and see Jesus in the garden praying, and may we do it as well. I believe that Jesus, if he had to go without prayer that night, it would have been devastating. He needed the Father. He needed to communicate with him, and he wanted to pray. Well, we see this great need for prayer. You see all the different things that are going on in his life. He's exhausted. He's been busy. He's been stressed. But what does he do? He prays. May we never be too busy to pray. Verse 36 says, Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." He takes the 12 with him. He tells them to stay. Peter, James, and John get to have a deeper view of what's happening with Jesus, and they know that he's going over there to prayer, but as everything else in that whole evening, we see why he's going to have to say in John 14, "Let not your hearts be troubled." They're troubled. They know he's talking about his death, his body being broken. You know that he's talking about his blood being shed. Here he is sorrowful to death, and I don't know what exactly that looked like on Jesus, but they had to have understood that something was going on, and he comes and he gives them a more intimate view of what's going on, and then he moves away from them from a distance, and he goes about a stone's throw away, and he is wanting to pray. They know that he wants to pray. What does he say? He says, "Remain here and watch with me." He's trying to encourage them to do it as well. When we look at the contents of Jesus' prayer in verse 39, it says that he went a little bit farther. He fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Jesus, what are you thinking in the garden? What are you thinking as you look back to Jerusalem and know what those people want to do to you? What do you think about the crosses that you've seen in your life where vile criminals have been tortured and persecuted and stuck up there to be a display in front of the world and die, and you know that it is coming to you? What do you think in this moment? And the contents of Jesus' prayer lets us know. What's he thinking? Take this away. I don't want this. If it is possible, let this cup pass away from me. He wants there to be another way. And as we look at Jesus and we think about his power and we think about his faith and we think about all the connection that he has with the Father and how he is driven directly to prayer, what we also see in Jesus is that he has come and taken upon himself a human form and the limitations that come with that, and the ability for people to take that human body and to beat it and to thrash it and to kill him and to take his physical life. And as he looks at this torture and the things that are coming at him because of his death, he wants there to be another way. He's begging the Father to make an exception to what he has been called on to do, if it is possible. What's he saying? Father, can we find another way? Well, what other way could there be? How about, Father, just ignore their sin and save everybody just regardless? Can we just do that? Just let mankind live. Let them reject what you want, but let's just make a decision that will ignore their actions and give them forgiveness with no sacrifice. What's the Father's answer to that prayer? No. Father, tell you what, instead of me going to the cross, let's let them work their way to heaven. There's a lot of good things that man can do for other people. There's a lot of ways that they could show devotion. There's a lot of prices they could pay. There's money that they could give. They could go and serve and do good works and in some way try to do the best they could to be righteous like you are. How about we just let them be good enough? And if somebody's a good enough neighbor, if somebody's a good enough husband or wife, if somebody goes out and serves this world in a good way, let their righteousness be enough. How about we just let that be the answer? And the Father's answer is no. There's none that are righteous. Nobody can earn the grace that they need to be with me. Father, let's just remove the need to obey from their life. We know what we're going to call on them to do. We're going to call on them to think about what I've done. We're going to call on them to also, Romans 6, die to sin. We're going to call them to be buried with me in baptism. We're going to call them to be raised up with me to walk in a brand new life. I know what I'm about to do is something that we're going to call them to do as well. Let's just remove that need. Let's remove the call to obedience and for them to sit here and just obey what they're doing. Can we remove the need for them to do those things and just say, you know what, it doesn't really matter what you do in connection to this. Let's just find some magic way to take care of their problems anyways. And the Father's answer is no. Father, can we set aside your need for righteousness? I know you're holy. I know you're righteous, and the people that you want to come with me, come to live with you or not. Father, I know you're just. Can we just let it slip by? Can we find another way? Can we make it where the cross doesn't matter? Can we make it where what I have to do, this cup that you're asking me to drink, is there any other way to get people to live with you? And what's the answer the Father gives him? No. Jesus, in the contents of his prayer, says so many things. He's looking for all the ways out that many people in the world today are trying to give a way out. They're trying to give a way around the fact that Jesus had to die for you. They're trying to make them self-sufficient as if they can do enough good works to make themselves right. They're trying to change who God is and say, well, God really doesn't care that much about sin, and he can close his eyes to what we do, and he can give us righteousness anyways. They try to do all these other things, but we need to think of Jesus in the garden and see that he is begging in every way. Let's make some of those ways possible. And the Father's going to say no every time. Why? Because none of us are righteous enough. All of us will sin. None of us can do enough good things. None of us can be good enough people. God cannot let go of his righteousness. He can't let go of his justice. The price has to be paid. And as Jesus is here sorrowful unto death praying, let's remember the Father's words are, no, this is the way. And as we think about our lives and we think about the lives around us, let's remember Jesus is the only way. He's the truth. He's the life. Nobody's going to get to the Father but through what he has done. His righteousness is what we need. Jesus asks for all those things, and how does he close his prayer? He says, not as I will, but as you will. The content of his prayer is to ask for another way, but ultimately the only way that Jesus ever wanted to walk was in line with the will of the Father. In verse 40, he finishes that prayer and he goes back, and it says that he came to the disciples and he found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, so you couldn't watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He's pouring out his heart. He's pouring out all of these requests. He's asking for there to be any other way. And you see the importance of this request because he's going to ask it again and again. But as he comes back, he looks at his disciples and these people that are going to be scattered, these people who are going to reject him. He comes back and they're just sleeping. Peter, you would die for me, but you can't stay up another hour for me? I ask you to watch and to pray. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to help you prepare for temptation. Storms are coming. You're about to be put to the test. What did he say? Watch and pray. You couldn't do it for an hour that you may not enter into temptation. And then he says, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I can't tell you how thankful I am that Jesus said those words. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's been me. Has that been you? He sees these guys who are asleep. They're exhausted. They're stressed. They have all these other things. They're confused. They're frustrated. They don't know what exactly is going on. They seem overwhelmed even in their life. And he looks at them and it's like, come on, you can do better than that. But at the same time, he's able to look at them and go, as much as you want to here, your body fails you, doesn't it? and we know that. Jesus knows how tired we can be. He knows the weakness of the human frame. He wants us to have this strong prayer life because he knows how weak we are. And he knows how much help that we need in walking through this life. Hebrews 4:15 tells us that we have a high priest we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted like we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. When we feel like we just need to beat ourselves up some more because I did it again. When we had in our mind and in our heart that we would be better than that, but I wasn't. When we've fallen short time and again, and the trappings of sin pull us and they sort of hold us back, and we look in the mirror and say, man alive, what could I do about this? I wish that I was better. I wish that I'd made better decisions. When Satan's trying to get us just to wallow in our past and our mistakes, remember Jesus. He knows the flesh is willing, but the spirit is weak. He understands your weaknesses, and he encourages you to get up, to continue to walk. He lived like we did. He knows what it is to be exhausted. He knows what it is to be betrayed. He knows what it is to see death coming straight at him. He knows all of those pressures, and he can sympathize with what we have done. And he says, because of that, come to the throne of grace and ask for the mercy that you need. You're not going to surprise him with what you've done. You're not going to surprise him with your hardship. You're not going to let him know what has already happened. He is there, and he knows. And even in the times that he knows everything that we have done, he's sitting there once again with open arms, saying, that's why I'm in the garden, about to be betrayed, and I'm going to trial, and I'm going to be on the cross for you. He knows that's the answer. Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. He again came and he found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and he just left them again. He went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. His time is short. His moment of freedom is about to be gone, and he's going to spend his last moments communing with the Father, asking the same thing time and time again, but being willing to say, you know what I want? God's will to be done. If it means I'm going to continue to suffer, may God's will be done. If it means I give up my life, I want your will to be done. If it means that I'm going to stand alone and nobody's going to be with me, your will be done. It doesn't matter what pressure the world is bringing upon me, your will be done. His disciples are weak, but he is strong, and he calls us to trust in him in our moments of weakness as well. As we close, you look at these final words as the betrayal and the rest of Jesus comes. It says, while he's still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, the one I will kiss is the man, seize him. And he came up to Jesus and at once and said, greetings, Rabbi, and he kissed him. In the garden, the betrayer comes. What was he thinking? A crowd with swords and clubs, overwhelming force, are going to come. He greets his rabbi, and he betrays him with a kiss. Oh, the power of Satan in a man's life. The power of greed. Judas, what did he do that earned the right to be betrayed? Was it healing the widow's son at Nain? Was it letting a man who couldn't walk take up his bed and walk? Was it a blind man who had never seen being able to receive his sight? Was it his love for the children whom he said we have to become like them to enter into the kingdom of heaven? What was it? But we see that Satan wants us to turn away from the Lord. He wants us to betray him as well. For what price will you betray the Lord? Will you turn on him for money? Will you turn on him because of pain? Will you give up on him because of frustration? Will you allow discouragement to be used to pull him away from you? Will you allow lust to pull you from his love for you? Will you allow weariness where you're just going to give up? Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." And he came up and laid hands on Jesus, and they seized him. Judas had a moment. He had a moment to make a change, and as he walked up to Jesus, he knew the sign that he would give them. He knew the money that he would receive, and he walks up and he has that split moment in time where he could forever change. Run. Forget it, I'm not doing this. Turn away from my commitment to what I've done. I'm going to let go of the grasp that Satan has on me. I'm going to make a change. I'm not going to take this. This is not the way I will be defined. This is not what history will say about me. He had the chance, and he didn't take it. He went ahead and betrayed the Son of God with his heart and with his actions. If we're here today, we still have that time. Judas's chance is forever gone. He can't ever turn back on what he has done throughout all of eternity. He'll be held responsible for those things. But praise be to God that we have a Savior who loves us, who wants to set us free, who knows we sin, who knows what we have done, who's aware of those things, and in that moment says, I still love you enough to go to the cross for you. And all I'm asking you to do is to change. Be more like me every day. Trust in me more. Walk with me. Pray to me. Come to me. Follow me. Follow my example. And I'm going to help you through this life and to the next. Judas's chance is forever gone, but ours is not. May we take advantage of every opportunity we have. Maybe you're here tonight and you want to take advantage of that opportunity. God's given you today. He may not give you tomorrow, but he's given you today. Do you want to follow the one who said, I am the only way? Your righteousness will never be enough. You can never work your way in. And trust me, God is not going to overlook what you have done. He's going to look at your life, and either you are covered in the blood of his Son, Jesus Christ, or you're not. You have either died to yourself and been buried together with him, or you have not. Are you ready tonight to be buried with him? Jesus died. He's going to be buried, but he's going to be raised again. And so can we. If we'll repent of our sins, if we'll confess his name, if we'll be buried with him, if we'll strive in every way to bring him glory, and we'll turn away from the sins in our lives. If we can help you in any way to that end tonight, we invite you to come as we stand and as we sing.